Alright, I'm gonna say what I've said at the beginning of the last few videos that have been uploaded, which is, I'm really busy and I don't have a ton of time to film and edit this video, so this is gonna be a shorter and sweeter video than normal. However, the last couple times I've said that, the videos have ended up being like 20 plus minutes anyway, so who knows if that'll actually mean anything. But what we're gonna be talking about today is whether it is worth having a dedicated daily, such as my wife's Ford Focus here, or if you're better off just daily driving your fun car, such as my Mustang here, or having sort of a do-it-all car that's more of an in-between, such as my 2008 WRX that I used to own. So obviously, as I've just mentioned there, I've been on all sides of the coin basically with this, where I've had dedicated dailies. Now I have the Focus. My very first car was a 2001 Volkswagen Jetta, and I had that as a daily for quite a while, and I owned my 350Z at the same time. Later on, I sold the Jetta and I got the WRX, which is a little bit more of a do-it-all. Later on, I sold the 350Z and I just had my WRX for a while. So let's talk about the pros and cons of each option and why it may be better or worse for you. But before we get into that, I'm gonna explain basically how certain people feel about it and why something may or may not be the right fit for you. So to me, what always made the most sense was owning a car that is totally practical, totally reliable. Theoretically, it is a Ford, but you know, completely reliable, practical, gets good gas mileage, does all the things you need a car to do on the practical side, and then having a car that is not necessarily needing to be practical and you own mostly for fun. Yes, it's still a car, so you can still use it for daily things, but that's not really the primary purpose of owning it. And Jason from Engineering Explained did a video about this years ago when he sold his 2014 STI, where he basically broke down how when he bought the car, what he thought he wanted was a car that was basically a jack of all trades and a master of none to an extent. The STI, I wouldn't say it's a master of no trades in the sense that it is a very, very good performance car, and it is a very, very practical daily driver in the sense that it's all-wheel drive, it has a lot of storage space. Overall, it is basically practical in most senses, other than it is a little bit compromised by being a performance vehicle on the suspension side of things, and especially on the gas mileage side of things. They get terrible gas mileage. I literally average only slightly less with this 5-liter V8 in my Mustang than I did in my WRX with a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder. But what he actually found later on is that what he really wanted was a car that could be totally reliable, that he could daily drive without issue, and another car that was fun, and in his case lightweight, small, that he didn't need to worry about the things like with practicality and stuff like that. I personally believe that was exactly what I wanted to, and I am kind of back to that now at the stage of life that I'm in currently. But when I owned my WRX at the same time as my 350Z, I found that as I was daily driving the WRX, I just stopped using the 350Z as much because the WRX kind of hit all of the bases the 350Z did for the most part for me, and the WRX just was convenient. It was just as fun to me as the 350Z, but it also had the practicality side of things covered. So as I came into a situation later on where I needed a little bit more money so that I could expand my business at the time, as well as a few other things that I needed to pay for, I ended up selling the 350Z because I felt like I basically didn't really need it anymore. And yet, here I am basically now in the same situation that I was originally with the 350Z. So let's break down the pros and cons of each option right now. As far as the pros of owning a dedicated daily and a separate sports car, they are, you don't have to be limited whatsoever in the modifications that you do to the sports car or whatever fun car that you own. Because you have a reliable daily driver that you know will do what you need a car to do, you don't have to worry about that with the car that you are building or whatever. If you want to do some more crazy modifications, that's something that you can do with a car that's not necessarily your daily driver. And that's something I would love to do to my Mustang. As you might be able to see, it is currently extremely filthy because I pretty much do daily drive it personally during the summer because I just love driving it. But the thing is that even when you do drive the fun car, a lot more often than you maybe necessarily expected. If things do break, because it doesn't necessarily have to be reliable, you always have another form of transportation that you can rely on if problems do arise with your fun car. And of course, like has been mentioned multiple times on the daily driver car side of things, that means you can have something that is exceedingly practical, gets fantastic gas mileage, and will balance out how much your wallet hurts owning something like this. You can have something that has amazing storage space, is able to carry around friends or dogs or whatever much more easily, and maybe much more than you would want to in your sports car or whatever fun car you have on the side. As far as cons go, really the major con is just the daily driver car and how you feel about it, how much you actually enjoy driving it, because sometimes it can make driving on a daily basis feel a little bit more mundane when you're in something that you just don't find as exciting. Now, boo-hoo, is that really that big of a deal? Of course it's not. But on a long road trip or something like that, you're probably not going to take your very fun car on a long road trip for the most part. Maybe some of you might try it, but most people are not going to risk that, and they're going to take their maybe boring daily driver car. And that's fine, but you will miss out and you will feel a little disappointed when you hit a fun road or something like that, or a cool experience, and you're doing it in your lame car, so to speak. I know that I certainly have felt that. I went on vacation in 2021 with my wife to South Dakota, and it was a super fun trip, and I went on a lot of really fantastic driving roads in the area that we were at, and I really missed not being able to drive my WRX there. But ultimately we ended up taking my wife's car because it was more practical in the sense that it got way better gas mileage, and we'd be spending practically half the price of what we would have spent on gas driving the WRX. So you will miss out on certain experiences like those here and there. But on the other side of things, pros and cons for owning a do-it-all fun car like the WRX. Pros, you can use it for literally anything, and that's super nice. And in those moments where you're on a vacation or something like that, you're somewhere far away on a road trip and you want to drive on a fun road or something like that, you have your fun car with you because your fun car is your car. Another big pro is owning lots of cars seems glamorous and fun. I like how I pointed at this like the fact that I have 3 cars is crazy or something, because my truck is also parked over there. But I have owned up to 4 cars at a time, and the thing is, it is fun in a sense that you have lots of options, and that's cool, but the major downside is owning 4 cars does cost a lot more money, even if you don't have payments on all of them or whatever it may be, because the cost of insurance and the cost of registration and things like that, they might not seem like a big deal, but they add up really quickly, and you end up spending a lot more money on things like that. So with a single fun car that you can daily drive, such as a WRX or some form of hot hatch or something like that, that's a single car. And you get to reap all the benefits of a fun car without having to pay for multiple different cars. And another benefit of a daily driven fun car is, for me personally, this might not be the experience of everyone, but it really made me feel more connected with the car scene when, just on a mundane daily basis, I was driving around in my WRX as a regular car, but when you'd come across fellow enthusiasts or something like that, it felt like you could connect with them, being like, hey look, I also like cars, in that sort of way, easier than you might in a car like the Focus, where you tend to just really blend in. Now, is that a big deal at all, and do I think that should be a primary concern whatsoever? No, I definitely don't, but it's just a nice feeling when you can connect with people on a daily basis that share the same interests. Now, as far as cons go for a daily driven fun car, well, the first thing that I personally think of is you just are taking a bigger risk with any modifications that you do to your car, because if that is your only car, then if for some reason something that you do happens to break the car in one way or another, then you are just out your transportation. Now, for some of us, we might have something else anyway, like a truck or a motorcycle or something like that, which means that we won't be totally out of a way to get around. But for a lot of us, if this is our only vehicle, that does mean that if it breaks, then we just are out our transportation, like I had said. And that is definitely something that is going to be a concern, something that you have to consider, because when you are modifying a car in almost any way, you are decreasing the reliability, at least partially. So any modification, especially major engine modifications and tuning that you might want to do, which don't seem like an issue whatsoever on a car like my Mustang as a second car, are something you're gonna have to weigh and be a lot more careful about with your primary car also being your fun car. Another downside is that a lot of cars that we'd be tempted by as a daily driven fun car, cars that are fun but also practical, are oftentimes inherently compromised. A car that is going to have more cargo space and is going to be more practical for daily driving in one way or another is probably going to be somewhat compromised when it comes to performance in a different way. Now, that's assuming you're driving something that is more of a do-it-all sort of car as a daily driver. Some of you could be daily driving something like my Mustang or my 350Z, and in that case, being worried about hardcore performance is probably not really an issue. But for the more do-it-all sort of cars like WRXs or Focus STs or whatever it may be, that sort of thing, then yes, you can do a lot performance-wise with those cars, but the ultimate potential of them is, at least in a lot of cases, going to be slightly more limiting than it would be with a purpose-built sports car, for instance. So how do you know what's right for you? Well, consider first of all your budget. Are you really going to be able to spend all the extra money that comes with owning multiple cars? You're paying more in gas, you're paying more in insurance, you're paying more for registration. There's a lot of things that go into it that make owning multiple cars far more expensive. And that doesn't even take into account if you have, for instance, a car payment on both cars that you own. How much do you really want to modify the car? Because if you just want a fun car and you're planning on basically leaving it mostly stock, well then for you it might make the most sense to own something that is fun but is also practical, something that will still be reliable while also being a joy to drive. If you plan on modifying a car a lot and that's really what you're interested in doing, well then picking a vehicle as your daily driver and modifying that probably does not make as much sense as having a separate vehicle that you can tinker with and not have to be concerned with the reliability quite so much. Like I said, I've been on both sides of the coin here, and I think that both have absolutely their own merit, and both of them can be right for a specific person. So in my case now, with me being married and having my wife's car, if I need a practical car, oftentimes we're together, we're not away from each other that often, so I have this car that I can use, and then I have my Mustang if I want to be a hooligan, which is fairly often in fact. So for me now, it just makes sense. But not so many years ago when I was single and I had the 350Z and the WRX at the same time and was fairly busy driving a lot, spending most of my time in what ended up being my daily car, the WRX, well, at that time, it kind of made more sense to have a vehicle that did everything, including being a fun car, rather than owning multiple cars, because I found that, unfortunately, I just didn't drive the 350Z that much by the time I got the WRX. I just didn't always have time to, and even when I would want to drive it, if I was hanging out with friends or something like that, it made more sense to choose the vehicle that could carry more people or things the vast majority of the time. So hopefully this video was useful to some of you who maybe didn't know which direction you wanted to go with a car purchase, whether you wanted to get something on the more practical side and something completely separate, which is basically a dedicated fun car, or if you wanted to get a car that can really do it all. And I also want to thank you so much for watching this video and thank all of you for the support that the channel has been getting recently. We have the goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I think we're going to hit that by the end of this month of September, which is absolutely amazing. We only have, I think, as of today, as I'm filming this on Friday, is it the 8th? Yes. we only have like 25 subscribers left to hit that target, which is absolutely amazing. We have more than doubled the amount of subscribers on the channel over the course of this year, so I want to thank you all so much for that. And if you really enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the like button as well. That also really helps out the channel. So thank you for liking, thank you for subscribing, and I will see you guys all in the next one.